I'm lying in a hospital bed, and every breath feels like broken glass in my chest. My right side won't move properly. There's a morphine drip in my arm, making everything fuzzy at the edges, but not fuzzy enough to forget what happened 20 minutes ago. I was at the bottom of my grand staircase. 15 marble steps. I'd just fallen down every single one of them. My son Marcus was kneeling beside me, crying, asking what happened, begging me to stay awake, and behind him, standing with her hand on his shoulder looking concerned, was Vanessa, his fiancée. The woman who'd just pushed me down those stairs. Now I'm in this hospital room, and they're both here. Marcus holding my hand, tears streaming down his face. Vanessa standing behind him wearing the perfect mask of a worried future daughter-in-law. The doctor just told us I have a broken hip, 3 fractured ribs, and severe head trauma. I'm 68 years old. These injuries could kill me. That's exactly what Vanessa wants to. I try to tell Marcus what happened. That Vanessa pushed me. That right before her hand hit my back, she'd whispered something I'll never forget. "You're taking too long to die." But the morphine is pulling me under, and my words come out slurred, confused. Marcus thinks I'm disoriented from the fall, from the pain medication, from the trauma. Vanessa leans close to my ear while Marcus is talking to the doctor. Her whisper is ice cold, telling me that if I say anything about the push, she'll finish what she started. That hospital patients die all the time and no one would question it. Then she straightens up, touches Marcus's arm, says something about getting him coffee. Playing the devoted fiancé while threatening to murder me. I have a $45 million estate. Marcus inherits everything when I die. And Vanessa has decided she's not willing to wait 20 more years for me to die naturally. If you've ever been betrayed by someone your family trusted, leave a comment. And subscribe if you believe that some people will do anything for money. Let me tell you how I survived my son's fiancé's murder attempt, and why I waited until her wedding day to destroy her in front of 400 guests. I've been a widow for 8 years now. My husband Richard spent 40 years building a real estate development company from nothing into an empire worth $45 million. When he died, he left everything to me with the understanding that our son Marcus would inherit it all when I passed away. Marcus is 35, works in tech, makes a comfortable living, but nothing that would ever approach the wealth his father built. 3 years ago, his wife left him for someone else. The divorce nearly destroyed him. He was lost and vulnerable and desperate to find someone who wouldn't betray him. That's the state he was in when he met Vanessa at a charity gala last year. She was 28, absolutely stunning, and worked as an event coordinator. Marcus brought her home to meet me after their 3rd date. I wanted to love her for him, wanted to see what he saw. But from the moment Vanessa walked into my entrance hall, something felt wrong. Her eyes moved around the space in a way that didn't feel like admiration. It felt like assessment, like she was calculating square footage and property values. During dinner, she asked questions that seemed normal on the surface. How many properties did we own? What had Richard's business been worth? When Marcus left the room to get wine, she asked me directly when Marcus would inherit his share. I told her that was a private family matter. Her smile never wavered, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Something cold that disappeared so quickly, I almost thought I'd imagined it. 6 months later, Marcus proposed. I tried to be happy for him, tried to push aside the uncomfortable feeling in my stomach. I didn't want to be the overbearing mother who saw threats everywhere. So I kept my concerns to myself and told myself I was being paranoid. I offered to host their engagement party at the estate. Invited 100 guests. I wanted to support Marcus even though every instinct screamed that something about Vanessa wasn't right. During the party planning, Vanessa kept circling back to certain topics. Had Marcus updated his will? Did I have power of attorney documents? Shouldn't Marcus have access to my bank accounts in case of emergency? She framed everything as practical planning, but I knew what she was really asking. She wanted to know how quickly she could get her hands on $45 million. One night, I couldn't sleep and found myself searching for information about Vanessa Cole. I found an engagement announcement from 5 years earlier. She'd been engaged to Harold Patterson, a 72-year-old real estate investor. 6 months after that announcement, I found his obituary. He died in a fall down the stairs. My hands were shaking as I kept searching. I found another previous engagement. Robert Chen, a 68-year-old tech entrepreneur, had died in a car accident 8 months into his engagement to Vanessa. I took everything to Marcus the next day. Showed him the obituaries, the pattern, the concerning coincidences. I told him he needed to slow down. He was furious. Said I was being paranoid, that I'd never liked any woman he dated, that I was trying to sabotage his happiness. He accused me of Googling his fiancée like some kind of stalker, of trying to destroy his relationship because I was jealous and controlling. Did I realize Vanessa had already been working on him, already planting the idea that I was threatened by her. So I backed off. What else could I do? The engagement party was on a beautiful Saturday evening in September. 100 guests spread across the lawn. Vanessa was radiant, playing the role of gracious bride-to-be perfectly. She charmed everyone. Late in the evening, I went upstairs to get more champagne from the upper wine cellar. I was at the top of the grand staircase, 15 marble steps, when Vanessa appeared beside me. The party noise was distant. We were completely alone. She said we needed to talk, and her voice had changed. All the warmth was gone. I turned to face her, and the woman standing there wasn't the gracious fiancée from downstairs. Her eyes were cold, empty. She told me I was standing between Marcus and his inheritance. I tried to explain that the estate would be his eventually, that I might live another 20 years. That's when she said the words I'll never forget. Eventually isn't good enough. This isn't my first time. You're taking too long to die. This isn't my first time. She'd just admitted to killing before. Harold Patterson, who fell downstairs. Robert Chen, who died in a car accident. They'd been murder. Her hands hit my back. Hard. Deliberate. The world spun. Pain exploded through my body. My hip cracking, ribs breaking, head slamming marble. I landed at the bottom, unable to move. Through blurred vision, I could see Vanessa at the top watching, making sure I'd fallen far enough. Then she started screaming for help. Guests came running. Marcus dropped to his knees beside me crying. And Vanessa ran down the stairs playing the horrified witness, telling everyone she'd seen me trip, that it happened so fast. That's how I ended up in this hospital bed with a broken hip, 3 fractured ribs, and severe head trauma. The doctor told Marcus that at my age, falls like this are often fatal. But Vanessa had pushed me down those stairs intending to kill me for my $45 million estate. She just didn't push quite hard enough. And now she's threatening to finish what she started while my son holds my hand, completely unaware that the woman he loves just tried to murder his mother. I spent 3 weeks in that hospital. The broken hip required surgery. The fractured ribs made every breath painful. The head trauma left me dizzy and nauseous for days. At 68, recovery from injuries like these isn't guaranteed. Plenty of people my age die from complications after falls. Infections, blood clots, pneumonia. Vanessa was counting on one of those to finish what she'd started. She visited every single day. Brought flowers. Sat beside my bed holding my hand whenever Marcus was in the room. Played the devoted future daughter-in-law so convincingly that the nurses commented on how lucky I was to have such a caring family. The moment Marcus stepped out, her grip on my hand would tighten until it hurt. She'd lean close and remind me what would happen if I told anyone what she'd done. One word to Marcus, and she'd smother me with a pillow. Hospital patients died all the time, and no one would question it. So I said nothing. Played the confused elderly woman recovering from a terrible accident. But I was planning. Between physical therapy sessions, I researched everything I could find about Vanessa Cole. Found those 3 previous engagements I'd shown Marcus. Harold Patterson, who fell downstairs. Robert Chen, who died in a car accident. And a third I hadn't found before, James Morrison, a 71-year-old retired hedge fund manager who'd broken off his engagement to Vanessa 3 months in. No public explanation, just sealed court records that hinted at something dark. Vanessa had a pattern. She targeted wealthy older men or their heirs. She'd researched Marcus, knew about the inheritance, and targeted him specifically. This wasn't love. This was a con, and I was the obstacle standing between her and $45 million. For my hospital bed, I hired a private investigator. Her name was Linda Morrison. Ironically, she was James Morrison's daughter, the hedge fund manager who'd escaped Vanessa. Linda had suspected Vanessa in her father's case but couldn't prove anything. Her father had refused to press charges, just wanted Vanessa gone from his life. Linda told me what had happened. Her father had woken up one night to find Vanessa standing over him with a pillow. He'd played dead, then confronted her the next morning. She'd claimed she was just checking on him, but he'd seen the truth in her eyes. He'd paid her $50,000 to disappear and never speak to him or his family again. Linda started surveillance on Vanessa immediately. Tracked her movements, her finances, her communications. Within a week, she'd uncovered things that made my blood run cold. Vanessa had $87,000 in credit card debt. Gambling problem. She'd been cut off by her previous marks and needed a new score. She'd researched Marcus for months before their meeting at that charity gala. Their encounter hadn't been chance. Vanessa had bought a ticket specifically to target him. Linda found Vanessa's search history on a cloud sync device. Searches for how long hip fracture recovery took in elderly patients. Whether falls could cause delayed death. How to contest a will if an heir died before their parent. She'd been planning my murder and researching the aftermath before she'd even pushed me. Most damning were the text messages between Vanessa and an unknown number. Messages sent the day after my fall. The old bitch survived. Need plan B. The response. Wedding soon. Inheritance after. Be patient. Vanessa had an accomplice. When I was finally discharged from the hospital, Marcus insisted Vanessa move into the estate temporarily to help care for me. My stomach dropped, but I couldn't refuse without seeming ungrateful or paranoid. So Vanessa moved into the guest suite and immediately started acting like she owned the place. Giving orders to staff. Redecorating. Making herself at home in what would soon be her house once I was dead. I was confined to a first-floor bedroom because I couldn't manage stairs yet. The irony wasn't lost on me. The stairs where she'd pushed me were visible from my window. A constant reminder. That's when the accident started, and why medications were switched. I noticed because the pills looked different. Had the home care nurse verify them, blood pressure medication replaced with blood thinners that would make me bleed out if I fell again. The nurse assumed it was a pharmacy error. I knew better. Then a gas leak in my bedroom. Woke up one night feeling dizzy and sick. Called the fire department. They found a small leak in the line. Could have been accidental, they said. Could have been a loose connection, but Linda's surveillance footage showed Vanessa in the utility room, where the gas lines were accessible the day before I got sick. Next, my car. I had a physical therapy appointment, and when the mechanic did his routine pre-service inspection, he found the brake lines had been cut. Not worn, cut. Someone had deliberately sabotaged them. Linda's cameras caught Vanessa in my garage the morning before, though she'd been supposedly shopping with Marcus at the time. She'd snuck back to the house, cut the brake lines, then returned to meet Marcus before he noticed she'd been gone. Each incident was planned. Each had an alibi. And each was meant to look like an accident. Linda traced the unknown number from the text messages. It belonged to a man named Derek Shaw, 34 years old. Vanessa's ex-husband. They divorced 2 years ago, but stayed in contact. He'd been involved in the previous schemes. The car accident that killed Robertson? Derek was a mechanic with access to brake systems. The suspicious fall that killed Harold Patterson? Security footage showed Derek leaving Harold's building an hour before the fall. They were working together. Derek handled the physical sabotage. Vanessa maintained her alibi and played the grieving fiancé. They'd done this before and gotten away with it. Linda found hotel records showing Derek had been staying 20 minutes from my estate during each of my accidents. Found surveillance footage of Vanessa meeting him twice at a diner off the highway. I realized the wedding was in 4 months. Vanessa wouldn't try to kill me before then. Looked too suspicious. She needed Marcus's inheritance, secured first through marriage. After the wedding, I'd be disposable. So I made a decision. I'd let Vanessa think she was winning. I'd play the weak, recovering elderly woman. I'd let the wedding proceed. And at that wedding, with 400 guests as witnesses, I would destroy her completely. I contacted my attorney and updated my will. If I died under suspicious circumstances before Marcus turned 40, everything went to charity. Marcus would inherit nothing until 40, ensuring Vanessa couldn't kill us both quickly for the money. I documented every accident, every threat, every piece of evidence. Linda continued surveillance, building an airtight case. The wedding was set for a Saturday in June. Vanessa planned an elaborate $300,000 affair, my money paying for most of it. She chose my estate as the venue. Perfect, I thought. My territory. My staff who were loyal to me. My home where I controlled everything. Vanessa had no idea what was coming. 2 weeks before the wedding, Vanessa made one final attempt on my life. I was doing physical therapy in the first-floor gym when I smelled smoke. Fire had started in the electrical closet near my bedroom wing. The fire department responded quickly and put it out before it spread, but the fire marshal said it looked like faulty wiring. Old house, old electrical system. These things happen, but Linda's surveillance showed Derek entering the estate through the service entrance that morning. Showed him accessing the electrical panel in that closet. They tried to burn me to death in my own home, but I added it to the growing file of evidence. Soon, I told myself. Very soon. The night before the wedding, I sat in my study with Linda, my attorney James, and Detective Sarah Reeves from the state police. Linda had compiled 6 months of surveillance footage, text messages, financial records, and documented evidence of every murder attempt. Detective Reeves reviewed everything carefully. Security footage of Vanessa following me up the stairs at the engagement party, positioning herself behind me. Audio recordings of her threats in the hospital room. Linda had planted a device after the first visit. Documentation of the switched medications, the gas leak, the cut brake lines, the electrical fire. Surveillance of Derek at the estate during each incident. Text messages between them discussing the timeline and methods. Financial records showing Vanessa's debt and her pattern of targeting wealthy men. Most compelling was the background on her previous victims. Linda had gotten Harold Patterson's medical examiner report unsealed. His injuries were inconsistent with a simple fall. The angle and force suggested he'd been pushed. Robert Chen's car accident had brake failure that investigators at the time had noted was suspicious but couldn't prove was deliberate. Detective Reeves looked up from the files and said she had enough for an arrest. They could take Vanessa into custody that night. Before the wedding ever happened, I said no. Tomorrow at the wedding. After the vows. James was concerned about the risk. If Vanessa realized what was happening, if she panicked, she could try to hurt me or Marcus right there in front of everyone. She could flee. She had Derek as backup and he was dangerous. But I'd made up my mind. If we arrested her quietly tonight, she'd claim police harassment. Her lawyer would paint her as a victim of a bitter, controlling mother-in-law who couldn't let go. She'd spin the narrative and some people would believe her. Marcus might even believe her over the evidence, but if we did it at the wedding, with 400 witnesses, with the evidence presented publicly in front of everyone Marcus knew and loved, there would be no way to spin it. No way to claim I was lying or exaggerating or trying to sabotage her. The truth would be undeniable. Detective Reeves understood what I wanted. Public exposure. Complete destruction of Vanessa's carefully constructed facade. She agreed to coordinate with plainclothes officers positioned throughout the venue. They'd move in after the ceremony, during my mother of the groom speech. The hardest part was keeping Marcus in the dark. I'd agonized over whether to tell him, to warn him before he stood at that altar and said vows to a woman who'd tried to murder his mother. But James convinced me that if Marcus knew, his behavior would change. He might confront Vanessa. She could flee or accelerate her timeline and try to kill us both before the wedding. Marcus would marry Vanessa thinking she was the love of his life. Would promise her forever genuinely, with his whole heart. And then he'd watch as police arrested her in the middle of their reception. IT would destroy him, break his heart, humiliate him in front of 400 people. But he'd be alive. That was all that mattered. Detective Reeves warned me that if Vanessa suspected anything during the wedding, she might try to hurt me. She assigned an undercover officer as my personal protection. Linda would be watching Derek Shaw, who was coming as Vanessa's guest, listed as an old family friend. If things went sideways, Derek was the real physical threat. MY head of household Thomas, who'd worked for me 30 years, coordinated with the plainclothes officers. He'd make sure I was protected until the moment we were ready to move. That night, alone in my room, I questioned everything. Was I doing the right thing? I was about to destroy my son's wedding day, humiliate him in front of everyone he knew, reveal that the woman he loved was a murderer. Marcus would be devastated. His trust in his own judgment shattered. He'd loved Vanessa, planned a life with her, believed in her completely. Maybe I should call Detective Reeves right now. Have Vanessa arrested quietly. Spare Marcus the public spectacle. But then I thought about what would happen if I did. Vanessa would make bail. Would have access to Marcus. Would poison him against me. Convince him this was all a terrible misunderstanding orchestrated by his bitter, controlling mother who couldn't stand to see him happy. Marcus might believe her over me. Might marry her anyway despite the charges. And then Vanessa would kill me. And eventually Marcus too. Once she had what she wanted. And oh, this had to be public. Had to be undeniable. Had to be witnessed by everyone Marcus trusted, so he couldn't convince himself it wasn't real. Marcus would be hurt. But he'd be alive. The wedding morning arrived. The estate was already bustling with activity. Coordinators, florists, caterers, rental companies setting up chairs and tables on the south lawn. Vanessa's vision of a perfect wedding, funded by my money. The last money she'd ever see from this family. I dressed carefully in the navy suit I'd chosen. Vanessa had tried to convince me to wear beige, something that wouldn't stand out. She wanted all eyes on the bride. I'd insisted on navy. I wanted to be visible for what was coming at 18 noon. Detective Reeves checked in. Officers were positioned throughout the estate. 6 plainclothes detectives mixed with guests. Warrant prepared. Prosecutors standing by. Linda confirmed Derek had arrived and was staying in the guest house. Her surveillance had caught him and Vanessa meeting privately in the garden that morning. She'd planted audio devices and played me the recording, Vanessa's voice. After the reception, I'll suggest Margaret is tired. Get her alone. You know what to do. Derek. Same as before?
Yes.
Make it look natural. Heart attack, stroke, something. She's old. She's been injured. No one will question it. They were planning to murder me that very night. After the wedding. After the celebration. After Marcus was legally bound to her, I sat listening to them plan my death, and my hands shook with rage. But I also felt something like satisfaction. Because they had no idea what was about to happen. No idea that in a few hours, their entire plan would collapse in front of 400 witnesses. Marcus came to find me before the ceremony. Hugged me tight and thanked me for hosting, for being there, for accepting Vanessa. He said he knew we'd gotten off to a rough start, but he loved her and believed that in time, I'd love her too. I hugged him back with tears in my eyes and told him I loved him. That everything I was doing was because I loved him. He smiled, not understanding what I meant. Soon he would. 5 o'clock. 400 guests seated on the south lawn. String quartet playing Pachelbel's canon. Perfect June weather, not too hot, gentle breeze moving through the garden. Chairs arranged in neat rows facing an elaborate floral arch where Marcus stood with the officiant, looking nervous and happy and completely in love. I sat in the front row, mother of the groom, watching my son wait for the woman who'd tried to murder me. Vanessa's mother sat across the aisle beaming with pride, completely unaware her daughter was a killer. The whole scene was beautiful and wrong, and I felt sick knowing what was about to happen. The bridal party walked down the aisle in their pale pink dresses. Then the music changed, and everyone stood. Vanessa appeared at the back of the lawn in a Vera Wang gown that cost $30,000 of my money. She looked absolutely stunning, like every bride in every magazine, like the perfect beginning of a fairy tale life. She walked past me, and our eyes met for just a second. She gave me a small, triumphant smile. Thought she'd won. Thought in a few hours she'd be married to my son, and I'd be dead by midnight, and this estate, this money, this life would all be hers. Vanessa reached Marcus, and he was crying. So in love. So completely fooled by the woman standing in front of him promising forever while planning his mother's murder. The officiant began the ceremony. I barely heard any of it. I was watching Derek Shaw 3 rows back, watching the plainclothes officers scattered through the crowd, watching Detective Reeves stationed near the back with her hand close to her concealed weapon. I was counting down the minutes until this beautiful lie became public truth. The officiant asked Marcus if he took Vanessa to be his lawfully wedded wife. Marcus said, "I do," with his whole heart. Asked Vanessa if she took Marcus to be her lawfully wedded husband. She said, "I do," with that same triumphant gleam in her eyes I'd seen when she walked past me. They were pronounced husband and wife. Kissed while 400 people applauded. Vanessa had done it. Legally married to Marcus. One step closer to the $45 million. She had no idea this was the last moment of freedom she'd ever have. The reception moved to the grand ballroom. Cocktail hour, dinner under chandeliers and string lights, first dance, cake cutting. All the traditional moments unfolding exactly as Vanessa had planned. She worked the room like a politician, telling everyone how happy she was to be part of this family, how welcoming I'd been, how she couldn't wait to make this house her home. I watched her lie to 400 people with perfect sincerity. After dinner came the toasts. The best man gave a funny speech about Marcus's college days. The maid of honor cried through hers about Vanessa being the sister she'd always wanted. Everyone laughed and cried and clinked glasses and celebrated this beautiful union. Then the DJ announced that the mother of the groom would like to say a few words. I stood and walked to the microphone. 400 people watching me. Marcus smiling at me from the head table. Vanessa beside him wearing that perfect mask of warmth, but I could see the calculation behind her eyes. Wondering what I might say. Confident she'd contained any potential damage, I began by thanking everyone for being here to celebrate Marcus's wedding. Said it meant so much to see everyone supporting my son on this important day. Told them Marcus had married a woman he loved deeply, a woman he thought he knew. Something in my tone made the room go quiet. People shifted in their seats. Marcus's smile faltered slightly, but I continued. 6 months ago, at the engagement party right here on this estate, I had a terrible accident. I fell down the grand staircase, broke my hip, fractured several ribs, suffered severe head trauma. Everyone here had been so kind asking after my recovery, and I appreciated that more than they knew. Vanessa's smile was frozen on her face. What most people didn't know, I said, was that it wasn't an accident. Vanessa pushed me down those stairs. Gasps throughout the ballroom. Marcus stood up from the head table, his face confused. Guests turning to each other, murmuring, looking between me and Vanessa. The perfect reception atmosphere shattering like dropped glass. Vanessa stood too, her voice sharp when she said I was confused. That the medications and trauma had affected my memory. That this was inappropriate and embarrassing. That I wasn't confused, I told the room. In the hospital, Vanessa had whispered that if I told anyone about the push, she'd finish the job. That hospital patients died all the time and no one would question it. She'd said something else too. She'd said this wasn't her first time. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Marcus was shaking his head, looking between me and Vanessa like he couldn't process what was happening. Vanessa's mother looked stricken. I kept going. Told them that 5 years ago, Vanessa had been engaged to Harold Patterson, a 72-year-old real estate investor. He died falling downstairs. Before that, Robert Chin died in a car accident while engaged to her. Before that, James Morrison broke off their engagement after waking up to find her standing over him with a pillow. Vanessa's face had gone white. She started to say I was lying, that I was a bitter old woman who couldn't stand to see my son happy, but her voice was shaking now. The mask was cracking. I called Detective Reeves forward. She stepped out from the crowd with her badge displayed, identified herself, and told Vanessa she was under arrest for attempted murder. Vanessa turned to Marcus, grabbed his arm, told him not to let them do this. Said his mother was insane, that this was some kind of setup, that she loved him. I told the room we had 6 months of surveillance. Video of Vanessa following me up those stairs. Audio of her threats in the hospital. Documentation of every accident she'd staged. My medications switched to blood thinners. The gas leak in my bedroom. My brake lines cut. The electrical fire. Every attempt on my life carefully planned and executed. Detective Reeves added that we had Vanessa's text messages with her accomplice. Messages where they discussed the timeline. Where they planned my murder for tonight, after the reception, Everyone turned to look at Derek Shaw, who was already running for the exit. He didn't make it far. Two plainclothes officers tackled him in the doorway. Marcus was staring at Vanessa in absolute horror, asking her to tell him it wasn't true. Tell him my mother was wrong. And that's when Vanessa's mask shattered completely. Her face twisted, and she said I was taking too long to die. That they had $87,000 in debt. That she needed that money. The ballroom went completely silent. 400 people had just heard her confession. Marcus asked in a broken voice if she'd really been planning to kill me. Vanessa looked around the room, realized what she'd just admitted, started backtracking. But it was too late. I told Marcus quietly that yes, she was going to kill me. And then she was going to kill him too. He'd updated his will to include her. Once I was dead and he inherited, he'd have had an accident and she'd have taken everything. Marcus sat down hard like his legs wouldn't hold him. Two officers were handcuffing Vanessa while Detective Reeves read her rights. Vanessa started screaming that this was entrapment, that I'd set her up, that I'd let her marry Marcus knowing I was going to arrest her. Attorney James spoke up calmly and informed her the marriage would be annulled. That she'd married Marcus under fraudulent pretenses with intent to kill both him and his mother for financial gain. The marriage wasn't valid. Officers led Vanessa out of the ballroom in handcuffs, still in her $30,000 wedding gown, screaming that this wasn't over. Led Derek out separately, also in handcuffs. 400 wedding guests sat in stunned silence, watching it all unfold. After they were gone, the ballroom stayed quiet. No one knew what to say. What do you say when a wedding ends in arrest? People started gathering their things, leaving quietly, whispering to each other. The celebration was over. I went to Marcus. He was still sitting at the head table staring at nothing, in complete shock. I sat beside him and told him I was sorry. Sorry, I didn't tell him sooner. Sorry, I let the wedding happen. But I needed him to see, needed everyone to see, who Vanessa really was. If I'd told him privately, he might not have believed me. Might have thought I was trying to sabotage his happiness. He looked at me with tears streaming down his face and said she'd been going to kill me. Kill both of us. That he'd brought her into our lives, given her access to me, updated his will for her. That he'd almost gotten me killed. That I told him no. That she'd targeted him deliberately. That she'd researched him and planned this and manipulated him. That this wasn't his fault, but I could see in his eyes that he didn't believe that. That he blamed himself for being so blind, so easily fooled. For standing in front of 400 people and promising forever to a woman who'd planned to murder his mother. We sat in that empty ballroom surrounded by the remnants of what should have been the happiest day of his life, and I held my son while he cried. Vanessa was charged with attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, fraud, and assault with intent to kill. Derek was charged as an accomplice to everything. The prosecutor built an airtight case using Linda's surveillance footage, the recorded threats, the text messages, and testimony from 400 wedding guests who'd heard Vanessa's confession. Harold Patterson's death was reopened as a murder investigation. His daughter provided information that supported he'd been pushed. Robert Chen's car accident was also reopened with Derek's involvement under investigation. Vanessa and Derek both took plea deals rather than face trial and multiple life sentences. Vanessa got 25 years for attempted murder and conspiracy. Derek got 20 years as an accomplice. The marriage was annulled within a week. Vanessa was banned from contacting Marcus or me for life. Marcus moved back into the estate temporarily. He was devastated, humiliated, broken in a way I'd never seen. He'd stood in front of 400 people and married a woman who planned to kill his mother. Who planned to kill him. He'd been so blind, so easily manipulated, and the shame of it consumed him that I gave him time and space. Arranged therapy. Helped him rebuild his life piece by piece. Told him over and over that he wasn't stupid, that Vanessa was a professional con artist who'd done this before, that he wasn't the first person she'd fooled, but I could see he didn't fully believe it. The wound was too deep. 6 months later, Marcus moved into his own place. Started dating again. Carefully this time. He called me every day. Apologized constantly for doubting me, for bringing Vanessa into our lives, for almost getting me killed. I told him I was just glad we were both alive. I sold the estate a year later. Too many bad memories. Bought a smaller place in wine country where I could start fresh without looking at those stairs every day. Marcus met someone new. A teacher named Jennifer who was kind and genuine and had no interest in my money. They dated for a year before he introduced us. I approved. 3 years after the disastrous first wedding, Marcus proposed to Jennifer. They had a small ceremony at a bed and breakfast in Napa. 30 people. No elaborate production. Just family and close friends. I gave a toast at this wedding too. Much shorter than my last one. To Marcus and Jennifer. May your marriage be filled with love, honesty, and long, boring years of happiness together. Everyone laughed. Everyone who'd been at the first wedding remembered. On my 71st birthday, I sat on my porch watching sunset over the vineyards. Marcus had sent flowers. Jennifer had baked a cake. Linda had called a check-in. I thought about the day Vanessa pushed me down those stairs. The terror, the pain, the months of fear. But I'd survived. I'd fought back. I'd saved my son. The $45 million sat in trusts and investments. Marcus would inherit it eventually, when he was older and wiser and less vulnerable to predators like Vanessa. I had no regrets about how I'd handled it. The public arrest, the spectacle, the humiliation. Vanessa had deserved every bit of it. And my new house. There was one wedding photo on display. Not from the first wedding. Those had all been destroyed. But from the second. Marcus and Jennifer cutting cake, laughing, covered in frosting. Real happiness. Real love. Real trust. Sometimes I looked at that photo and thought about how close I'd come to losing Marcus. Not just to Vanessa's murder plot, but to his own grief and self-blame afterward. But he'd survived. We both had 5 years after the arrest. I received one final letter from Vanessa. Prison postmark. I didn't open it. Didn't read it. Returned it to sender with a note. I have nothing to say to you. Through Linda, I heard Vanessa had been denied parole. Would serve the full 25 years. She'd be 48 when she got out. Good. I'd updated my will one final time. Created a foundation in Richard's name to help elder abuse victims. Funded it with $5 million. Hired Linda to run it. The foundation helped dozens of elderly people escape financial abuse, guardianship fraud, and attempted murder by family members. I attended the first annual gala and listened to victims tell their stories. Watched them receive help and justice. This was what Vanessa's attack had created. Not just my personal victory, but help for others. On my 75th birthday, Marcus asked if I'd been scared standing up at his wedding to give that speech. I told him I'd been terrified. That Vanessa had already tried to kill me 4 times, and I thought she might try again right there in front of everyone. He asked why I'd risked it. I looked at my son and told him the truth. Because he was my child. And I would walk through fire to protect him. Even if it meant ruining his wedding day, breaking his heart, and risking my life. Marcus hugged me and said he knew. That he understood now. That was enough.